Hi everyone, welcome to this week's health tip, where I'm going to be sharing a little bit more of my story. So if you remember last week, I kind of mentioned that I'm going to be going through a few questions about my chiropractic story, why I'm doing what I'm doing. This week's question was, what is the reason I chose to become a network spinal analysis practitioner? So this might be an interesting story for some of you. It goes back to 1996, I guess. So I was practicing in Italy. As you know, I graduated from chiropractic college. I worked for 1 year in Toronto substituting in a guy's office that he wasn't very well. And then after that, took off to Italy. So while I was in Italy, I was visiting other chiropractors. And so two things happened, and I kind of say, if two things happen, don't take it as a fluke. So while I was in Italy, I was in contact with my friends here in Canada. And my best friend from chiropractic college, Dr. Dan, he called me and we were talking on the phone, and he goes, yeah, you know what, I went to this seminar and there was some pretty wild stuff happening, and I got this, this thing called an entrainment. It was a different kind of adjustment from this guy, and I hope all the wild stuff happened in my body, and I was releasing tension, and I was breathing differently, and it's called network spinal analysis, and he said you should look into it if he comes to teach it in Italy. So then maybe a number of months later, I was visiting some chiropractors, and there was a husband and wife couple. One is Swiss and one is Italian. They both went to the Canadian Memorial College many years before me. They graduated. They had opened a chiropractic office in Torino in Italy. So I was having lunch with the man, and we were sitting outside, beautiful Italy, sunshine. We're having lunch, and in his big Swiss accent, he goes, Marco, I just went to the seminar and it was the most amazing thing I've ever felt in my life. This technique is going to change the world. It's going to revolutionize healthcare, and he was very, very excited about it. And so they're kind of like the big wigs of network care in Italy, obviously right now, and they're still doing it. And so I heard it twice, and I said, okay, so let me just keep my ears open. So when I finally found that Donald Epstein, the inventor of the technique, was coming to Italy, I said, let's go check it out. So Donald would always go to Como, the city in the northern part of Italy where George Clooney has his house, apparently. And they filmed the Star Wars prequel series up there too, and or some of it anyway. So I went to the seminar. So what I liked about it was the reasons why I like network care. It was obviously I went to the seminar to learn it. And that was one of many, because Donald Epstein would go to Italy maybe 4 to 6 times a year to teach the different branches of the network care. There's like beginner level, intermediate, and advanced. And then other than that, he's teaching also the breathing exercise that I teach you guys here as well, the SRI exercise. And sometimes they do something called transformational gates, which is a big event where maybe over like 50 to 80 to 100 people that are all getting network care all go to this hotel in Como. And there's maybe 5 or 6 chiropractors working on 5 tables, and all these people in the same room at the same time, getting network care over 2 or 3 days, getting 3 entrainments a day. It's a pretty wild event, and there's a lot of energy in the room, and lots of laughing and crying, and all sorts of funny things happen there. So I would take very many trips to Como to learn the technique over the many years that I was in Italy. So when I went to the first seminar, these were some of the interesting things that I found out about the technique. So number one, it's very light. So I like that approach because sometimes the regular traditional chiropractic care, there's a word we usually say, it's contraindicated, meaning you shouldn't do it. Maybe on somebody that has osteoporosis, or even people that might have cancers and things like that. They usually say, don't adjust people manually that way. But if I'm doing network care, I can do that on any age. I can do it on a newborn baby, and I can do it on a 100-year-old lady full of osteoporosis, as long as she can get up and down off the table. The little light touches can't really hurt anybody. So I like that it could be applied to anybody, more or less. The other thing I liked is that it honors the innate wisdom of the body. So right off the bat in chiropractic, we talk about the body having an innate intelligence, meaning that the body intuitively knows on its own what to do, how to heal itself, how to regulate itself if it's balanced. And so the cool thing, when I was watching Dr. Epstein work for the very first time, he would have somebody lying on the table, and he said, so I'm going to do this touch down here, but what I'm trying to do is get his brain to work on the second vertebrae in that guy's neck. So the guy lying down, he didn't even know what the touches were, So Dr. Epstein would say to us, meaning the second cervical, that's all, the guy was face down, so he didn't know what he was doing. He said, he's telling us, look at his C2, meaning the second cervical vertebrae in his neck. Epstein would go and do this little entrainment contact, then we'd watch up there, and then the guy's lying on the table, and all of a sudden he's doing that, and you see all the muscles and everything work right around the C2 vertebrae in the neck. So when I saw that, I'm thinking, that's pretty interesting. So since then, obviously, I've been doing network care on lots of people. When I do it on little kids, I'll tell the parent, look, I'm going to touch here. This is for the fifth vertebrae in the neck, and watch the kid, and he'll lift up his neck, or he'll wiggle it, or this one is for his pelvis, and you'll see the kid wiggle the pelvis around. So I thought that was really cool that we're kind of just helping the body pay attention to itself and work on its own. So that was really one of the things I liked about it. I really think it's kind of at the leading edge of health and wellness too, because it's sort of like a light technique, honors the body, helps the body pay attention to itself and do its own healing. It's very, very impressive. And one of the other things that impressed me was that Dr. Epstein had actually, he had some good connections sort of like at university and community and research community. And when I went to the first seminar, he had already kind of was able to get a research study done on network care. And it's one of the biggest studies ever done in chiropractic because our profession is kind of disadvantaged. We don't have these big drug companies or the pharmaceutical industry giving us millions of dollars to do research studies. So he was lucky enough that the University of Irvine in California, they actually did a study using questionnaires from many, many offices around the world, and it added up to about over 2,000 some odd patients that were getting the care. And they had standardized a questionnaire about the person's quality of life. And they actually found that when you were doing network care, not only were the people getting better physically, but they were actually making better decisions in their life and choosing to do things that were healthier for them, and they were more resourceful, and a lot of quality of life issues improved, not just like the neck doesn't hurt anymore, my headaches have gone away, but other things as well. And the fact that he was doing all this other research, and I was watching the responses of the people on the table, and I knew it was a light technique and I could do it on everybody. I just thought that was a really cool thing, and that's why I liked, getting the network care. So you guys might find this interesting. So when I was learning this technique, when I was getting it on myself, because when you go to the seminars, we actually work on each other, obviously. So I was getting it very infrequently because I was in Genova or I was in Abruzzo in Italy, and I had to travel by train up to go to these seminars. So maybe I would get one like maybe every 4 to 6 months. I would go to a seminar. And that's the only time I would get network care on me because there wasn't any, chiros around that would do it except me. So when I was getting the technique, it took me about 8 sessions before I actually felt anything, quote unquote. And that's very common. A lot of guys come here and say, I don't feel anything. He's just touching my, I feel these little touches, but I don't feel anything. And so while I was on the table, because I know what the technique was, I was learning it, and I said, okay, I know that touch that he just did. That was down here on my sacrum, but that was for the second bone of my neck. And so I says, okay, let me see what I feel. And so I was just relaxing. And then what I noticed is that my cheeks started to feel sore on the headrest paper, like on the table. And what I was perceiving was that because that contact with my brain was paying attention to my upper neck, because these muscles were relaxing, my head was actually starting to get heavier, and it started to get uncomfortable here. And I naturally just lifted my head and wiggled it around a little bit. And just that little connection that I made said, okay, so it's not necessarily something dramatic. Sometimes it's just like a feeling of heaviness, or a feeling that something's not in the right spot, or a little awkwardness in your body, and you feel like you need to wiggle around and move. And then the more I kind of did that, I knew where they were touching, and I said, oh, that's from my pelvis. Yeah, actually, what if I just pay attention to it? I feel like I need to wiggle my bum a little bit, so I'd wiggle my bum, or I'd bend my knees, or contract muscles, or stretch out my feet. And then obviously the more I did it, the more I know how to do that now, right? And so that's one of the things I always want to encourage my people to do, because a lot of people just stay still and they think I have to stay still and not do anything. But what you're supposed to do is just listen to these signals that your body's giving you. And if you feel like you should move something, stretch something, reposition your body, you're supposed to follow those sensations, because that's how your body's repairing and paying attention to itself and going through the process of network care. So that was a little long-winded today. Hopefully that's not too long and didn't bore anybody, but that's why I chose to be a network spinal analysis doctor. So we'll see you next time with the next question for next week. Take care.